There are certain sounds that stay with you long after they've stopped. Sounds that don't scream or demand attention, but quietly insist on being remembered. Tonight's story begins after the celebration fades, when laughter turns to silence and the world feels thinner than it should. It's a story about a sound that didn't belong, a movement without a cause, and a moment when curiosity turned into fear. As you listen, pay close attention to the quiet between the words, because sometimes what you don't hear is far more terrifying than what you do.
New Year's Eve has always been loud, chaotic, and full of people chasing excitement. That year, I wanted none of it. I was 35, tired of crowds and overpriced drinks, and honestly, I welcomed the excuse my friend Alex gave me. He was heading out of town to celebrate the new year in the city and needed someone to watch his dog, Bailey, for the weekend. Easy money, a quiet house, and no obligation to pretend I cared about the ball dropping at midnight. Bailey was a small husky mix, too quiet for her breed, almost unnervingly well-behaved. Alex trusted her with me for that reason alone. All I had to do was feed her, walk her twice a day, and keep her off the furniture. He left early that Saturday, and by late afternoon, the house felt strangely empty, like it was holding its breath. I spent the day killing time, movies, video games, scrolling aimlessly online. That night, I invited my girlfriend, Trisha, to come over after work. Alex gave joking permission, with the usual warning not to touch his bed. She wouldn't arrive until after midnight, so it was just me and Bailey for hours. Around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Bailey didn't bark. She didn't move. She simply lifted her head and stared at the door. That should have been my first warning. When I opened it, a woman stood on the porch. She looked to be around 30, wearing a hoodie and holding a jacket against her chest. Her expression was calm, almost bored. She introduced herself as Alex's girlfriend and said she'd forgotten something inside and needed to grab it quickly. I hesitated, but she spoke with confidence, familiarity, like she'd done this before. I offered to get it for her, but she shook her head and said she knew exactly where it was. Before I could object, she stepped inside and walked straight upstairs to Alex's bedroom. She didn't look around, she didn't ask for directions. She closed the bedroom door behind her, just enough to block my view. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, a strange unease crawling up my spine. I texted Alex immediately. "I didn't know you had a girlfriend." Minutes passed, no reply. The woman eventually came back down, jacket still in hand. I tried to make small talk, asking how long they'd been together. She smiled and said, "Too long," and laughed. It wasn't warm. It wasn't friendly. It sounded rehearsed. She thanked me and left. The moment the door shut, dread settled in. Alex finally called me back, loud music blasting in the background. When I told him what happened, his voice changed instantly. He went quiet, then angry, then scared. "I don't have a girlfriend." I described her. He didn't recognize her. When I told her she'd been alone in his room, he panicked and made me check for missing items. Everything seemed untouched, but then he said something that stuck with me. "I think I know who that was. If she comes back, don't open the door." He wouldn't explain. I watched the new year arrive in silence. No countdown, no celebration. Trisha arrived late, and I told her everything. She laughed it off at first, until Bailey suddenly stood up and stared at the front door again. This time, there was knocking. Not the doorbell, knocking. Slow, deliberate. I refused to answer. Trisha and I stayed quiet, hearts pounding, listening as the knocking eventually stopped. We retreated to the spare bedroom and locked the door. Exhaustion overtook us, and we fell asleep holding each other. Less than an hour later, Bailey began howling. She stood at the bedroom door, tail wagging, growling softly at the same time. That sound alone made my blood run cold. Then we heard footsteps on the hardwood floor, more than one set, moving carefully, slowly. The doorknob twisted. A woman's voice whispered, "Alex." I knew immediately it was her. Another voice murmured behind her. She wasn't alone. When she asked who was inside, I yelled that the police were already on their way. Tricia called 911 as quietly as she could. There was whispering outside the door, then retreating footsteps. When the police arrived, the front door was open. They believed she had taken a spare key earlier that night. Alex changed his locks the next day. To this day, no one knows what she wanted, and that's the part that still haunts me. Because whatever her reason was, it wasn't to steal.
New Year's Eve was finally over. It was well past 2 in the morning when my husband and I returned to our apartment building, exhausted from the cold, from the noise, from pretending we still had the energy to celebrate another year ending. We weren't drunk, just tired, the kind of tired that settles deep into your bones and makes everything feel unreal. Our apartment was on the top floor, a corner penthouse suite in a building that prided itself on privacy and security. 2 locked entry doors, security cameras everywhere. Sometimes a doorman, though not that night. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy, as if sound itself is hesitant to exist. One of the foyer lights flickered as we stepped inside. I remember thinking nothing of it at the time. The elevator ride up was smooth, silent. I leaned against the wall, already imagining my shoes coming off, the relief of finally sitting down. When the bell chimed and the doors opened onto our floor, everything felt normal for exactly 1 second. Then we saw her. At first, I thought she was just another resident, maybe drunk, maybe lost. But as our eyes adjusted to the dim hallway lighting, that assumption quickly unraveled. She stood hunched near the wall, moving slowly, dragging her fingers along the paint as if feeling her way forward. Her hair was dark, tangled, hanging over her face in thick, matted strands. She wore a black lace dress that was torn and stained, hanging off her like it didn't belong to her at all. She wasn't wearing shoes. She moved from door to door, stopping at each one, leaning in close and peering through the peepholes. My stomach tightened. Access to our floor was restricted. Everyone who lived there knew one another. We recognized our neighbors' faces, their routines, their cars. She was not one of them. My husband and I stopped walking. We stood there, frozen, watching as she tilted her head unnaturally close to a door, breathing softly against the wood. Then she made a sound. It wasn't quite humming. It wasn't quite growling either. It was something in between, a low, vibrating noise that crawled along the walls of the hallway. I whispered to my husband, asking if we should say something. He hesitated. He thought maybe she was intoxicated, looking for a friend's apartment. That explanation felt thin, but it was comforting, and we clung to it longer than we should have. She continued down the hallway, stopping at every door. Then she reached the apartment of an elderly woman we both cared deeply about. We'll call her Tilly. She lived alone. Her family rarely visited. We helped her with groceries, medicine, small things. Seeing that woman press her face close to Tilly's door made something snap inside me. I spoke before I could stop myself. "Excuse me, are you okay?" Her entire body stiffened, as if my voice had pulled her out of something deep and dark. Slowly, she turned toward us. Her head dipped, her shoulders shook. For a moment, I thought she was crying. Then she laughed. It was soft at first, barely audible, a thin, breathy sound that sent chills racing up my arms. As we stepped closer, her laughter deepened, morphing into something heavier, rougher. It rattled in her chest like something trapped. My husband asked again if she needed help. She straightened. I will never forget the way she stood up so suddenly, so perfectly straight, as if strings had pulled her upright. Her laughter grew louder, mixed with a guttural sound that didn't seem human at all. She stumbled forward, past us, toward the end of the hallway. Relief washed over me. I assumed she was leaving, but then she stopped. With terrifying precision, she turned around and began pounding on our apartment door. She screamed, raw, desperate screams that echoed down the hallway, bouncing off the walls, filling the space with panic. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling as I dialed emergency services. My husband yelled at her to stop. And just like that, she dropped to the floor. She began crawling toward us, fast. Her movements were jerky, unnatural. Her head snapped up for just a moment, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. Her eyes were dark, too dark. Her mouth was stained black, as if something had been rotting there. She hissed, a sharp animal sound that pierced through every rational thought I had left. We ran. We didn't wait for the elevator. We bolted for the stairwell, abandoning our shoes, our dignity, everything. We ran down 2 flights of stairs before stopping, listening desperately for the sound of her following us. There was nothing. No footsteps, no laughter, just silence. After several minutes, we forced ourselves back up. The hallway was empty. She was gone. We moved out a year later, but every New Year's Eve, I still think about that hallway and the woman who didn't belong there.
New Year's Eve that year was supposed to be forgettable. Just another house party, just another night of drinking too much and pretending the next year would somehow be different. My friend Logan was hosting. His parents were out of town and the house was his for the night. I arrived early to help set things up, grateful for the promise of a couch or spare bed to crash on so I wouldn't have to drive home afterward. The party filled the house quickly. Music, laughter, bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, counting down the hours until midnight like it meant something. When the clock finally struck 12, everyone cheered. Glasses clinked and strangers hugged like lifelong friends. After that, people slowly began to drift away, some to bars, some to other parties, some home. By the time the house quieted down, it was just a small group of us left. Familiar faces, people who felt safe. By 3 in the morning, it was just Logan, me, and our friend Cody. Cody had already passed out on the couch, mouth open, empty bottle still in his hand. Logan and I sat in the living room, talking about nothing, that hazy kind of conversation that only happens when you're drunk and exhausted at the same time. That was when we heard it. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable. A soft creaking sound that came and went, like old wood shifting. We ignored it. Houses make noises, especially old ones. We blamed the fridge, the pipes, anything that didn't require us to think too hard. But the sound didn't stop. It came again, slow, rhythmic, a long creak followed by a pause, then another, over and over, like something rocking back and forth.
Logan frowned and muted the TV. The silence made the sound louder, clearer. It was coming from the basement. We stared at the basement door at the end of the hallway. It was closed, the light beneath it off. Logan laughed nervously and said it was probably nothing. I nodded, even though the hairs on my arms had started to rise. The creaking stopped. That somehow made it worse. After a long moment, Logan called out, half joking, half serious, "Hey, who's down there?" No answer. We waited. The house felt heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on us. Then, just as suddenly as it had stopped, the creaking started again. That was when we decided to check. We were drunk enough to think grabbing knives from the kitchen was a good idea. Looking back, it was stupid. If something really had been down there, we wouldn't have stood a chance. But fear mixed with alcohol does strange things to your judgment. We opened the basement door. The sound grew louder. Each step down the stairs made my chest tighten. The basement wasn't large, just a couch, an old TV, a small bar area, boxes of junk stacked in corners. It smelled of dust and cold concrete. Logan flipped on the light, and the room came into view all at once. Nothing was out of place. No open doors, no broken windows, no signs that anyone had been there. Then I saw it. In the corner of the room, partially tucked away near a pile of old furniture, was a wooden rocking chair. It was moving, slowly, steadily, back and forth. The creaking sound matched its motion perfectly. I felt my stomach drop. Logan and I stood there, frozen, watching as the chair continued to rock on its own. There was no breeze, no vibration, no explanation that made sense. I took a step closer, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I sat down in the chair. It rocked. I rocked it myself, testing it, and the sound we'd been hearing echoed through the basement exactly the same. I stood up. The chair stopped. For a brief, stupid moment, relief washed over me. Then the chair began to move again, on its own. Logan whispered my name. His voice sounded far away, thin and shaky. I backed away slowly, every instinct screaming at me to leave. We didn't say another word. We ran up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut, and locked it. Neither of us slept. The next few days, Logan refused to open that door. He told his parents what happened when they came home. They laughed it off, said it was just an old house settling. But Logan's mom went quiet when she saw the chair. She told us it had belonged to his grandmother. She had died years earlier. The chair had been hers. She used to sit in it every evening, rocking back and forth while watching television, humming softly to herself. Logan's mom kept it for sentimental reasons, never being able to bring herself to throw it away. I don't believe in ghosts, or at least I didn't. But there was no one in that basement, no trick, no explanation that satisfied what we saw. The chair didn't just move once, it rocked like it was being used, patiently, deliberately. I've never experienced anything like it since. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the world feels thin, I still hear that sound in my head. Creak, pause, creak. And I wonder who was sitting in that chair, waiting for us to notice. Some memories fade with time, but others wait patiently in the dark, resurfacing when the world grows quiet. What happened that night in the basement may never have an explanation, and perhaps that's what makes it so unsettling. If this story stayed with you, if it made you glance over your shoulder or listen a little more closely to the silence around you, then it has done its job. If you enjoy true late-night horror stories like this one, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who isn't afraid of the dark, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that linger long after the screen goes black. Until next time, listen carefully. Some sounds are not as empty as they seem.